you are more than likely going to be taken away from your parents, or a danger to have in the house. You're likely going to go into the care system. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Molly and today I'm going to be talking about my nightmare experience with CAMHS, specifically a psychiatrist in CAMHS. I'm just prefixed by saying this is about my personal experience, but also how I think therapy, psychiatrists, therapists can learn from my experience, and hopefully it'll help some other people that might have also had bad experiences. But that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Yes, my face is flared up. No, I don't have any foundation on, but that is fine because we're all humans, all have imperfections. Sometimes our skin is just crap. So my personal experience with CAMHS started when I was young. Now, CAMHS is a children's psychology and therapy section or department within the NHS that helps children that are having mental health struggles or disorders. It covers a wide range of mental health disorders, issues and problems. When I was, I want to say 13, around about that age, I was referred to CAMHS because initially I was with YPAS, which was just a therapy children's thing that you could attend where I lived, and they decided that my issue was too complex or a little bit too difficult to deal with, so I was referred to CAMHS. Initially I was getting CBT therapy from a therapist, obviously, but some things started to happen and they decided that I needed some additional support, and I was referred to a therapist. No, sorry, I was referred to a psychologist. This experience with this psychologist caused me severe trauma, and it's something that I still struggle with today, and it had a massive impact on my family and my life. And I think I only met the woman twice and I still remember her name. I'm not going to put it out there on the internet, I still don't believe that's fair, but I still remember her name. I don't think I'll ever forget her name. So I had had plenty of therapy and counselling beforehand, in school, outside of school, but I had started experiencing symptoms. I had started to believe certain things that were not necessarily true and act in certain ways. Now, I also had, at that time, an eating disorder. Even though I wouldn't admit that, I had been told I had an eating disorder. I wasn't really eating. I was avoiding food as much as possible and I was very thin. First meeting with this psychologist, I had said initially already that I didn't like discussing weight, didn't like talking about weight. We had a bit of a conversation. She took me outside into the hall to where they had the scales. She weighed me and then she looked directly at me and just said, "Oh, actually, you've actually put some weight on anyway, so I'm not really worried about that." When I tell you those words broke me. I had an active eating disorder, and then she just told me there and then, "You've put weight on, so I'm not worried about you." So not only did she not offer me support for the fact that she just told me that I'd gained weight, which was very triggering for me and eventually just set me on my way, but she'd also said she wasn't worried about it. And with an eating disorder, what you hear then is, "I'm not sick enough, I don't really have an eating disorder, what I'm doing is fine." That fed my eating disorder. I thought, well, great, I can continue to do as I want to do. I don't deserve help, I don't deserve support for this. And that was kind of all she did to touch on eating disorder, and even that was harmful. I had started believing things that were not true, but I didn't know at the time the things that I were believing were not necessarily true. And as a bit of background, my home life was awful. There was a lot going on in my home life. I had a very mentally ill mother. I had a very unstable household. There was abuse going on, which I still struggle to talk about, but there was a lot going on. And I had all these problems coming up, but nobody had really diagnosed me with much at the time. I'd been diagnosed with anxiety, I'd been diagnosed with depression, low mood, but nothing else had really been set in stone. I was obviously going through CBT therapy at the time, and my therapist was thinking I had OCD, but it hadn't yet been fully investigated and confirmed. Now, With this woman, I went into a room and I, first of all, think I spoke to her for about 10 minutes. And all I kept telling her was how I hated my life, didn't want to be here. I really had a difficult relationship with my mum. I wanted to go to boarding school. I had ran away multiple times. I wanted to live with my nan and granddad. I didn't want to be in the house. Their response to that was to then say, okay, you wait outside, I want to speak to mum. She spent about an hour, or it probably felt like an hour actually, but I doubt it was actually that long. She spent a long time speaking to my mum, and then she then brought me in to speak to me. Mum was sat there crying, which was something that would happen a lot. So then I had the adult guilt of the fact, oh, you're upsetting her again, which everyone always used to tell me, you're making your mother ill, you're upsetting her. I could never explain what was going on at home because that was the response that I received. And so then I felt responsible. Am I making her ill? Is it my fault? So again, awful tactic, whatever it was that she was trying to do. And she basically reiterated all of this to me. You know, you're acting up, you're putting your mum under a lot of stress, you're looked after, you're cared for, your mother needs support, blah, 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 blah. So that was the first meeting. The next meeting is the one that was just... But what I want to point out in this first meeting are the things that I think 100% should have been improved on. I don't know if there's therapists or psychologists out there that could tell me whether this was something that they would do, but the weight thing, the way it was just brushed over, the speaking to me, not listening to anything that I was saying, and then bringing my mum in, who a lot of the problems were going on at home that were not, I wasn't allowed to discuss. And it just felt like she'd listened to me for a minute, then she wanted mum's opinion and she wasn't really caring about my opinion. And in her head, she decided I was just a naughty child, an attention-seeking child, someone who was maybe acting up because my mum was unwell. And that is all I got from that first meeting. And I did go home, I did harm. I had also been very suicidal at that time. I was distraught. I didn't feel any gain from that. All I could think about was the weight that I gained and the fact that I was just a dreadful human being. Now, cut to our next session. It gets a little bit complicated. I had imagined certain things. Now, I know now that these were being caused by not only very high stress and trauma, but also my intrusive thoughts. And especially as a young child, intrusive thoughts, even now, I struggle with them, but I understand their intrusive thoughts. Back then, I didn't know what an intrusive thought was, and I just believed these visions and images and thoughts that I was having were truth, and these were things that I'd done that I might not necessarily remember I'd done, like they were flashbacks. I thought that I had tried to put poison in my mother's food, and I had told someone this because I was distraught, I was distressed, and that is why I ended up getting referred to the psychologist, because it was quite serious. This woman brought, and I haven't talked out loud about this for a very long time, she brought me and my mum into the room. She'd asked me about it, but she didn't dig into it necessarily. She basically called us into a room and she said, you are more than likely going to be taken away from your parents. She just come out with it. She said, you are a danger to have in the house. You're likely going to go into the care system. This God's honest truth. You're likely going to go into the care system. You are a danger to your household. What else was there? That my mum could press charges if she wanted to, and basically that there was something very wrong with me, and it was unlikely that she was going to be able to resolve it. and we had this meeting, and then that was it. And she just kind of didn't give any advice, I don't, even to this day when I think back, I don't understand how somebody in such a powerful position who deals with such vulnerable people could have got things so wrong. And I was traumatized. My mother was crying. She rang my dad. My dad then, I always remember, he was working at the time, and he got driven straight there, and he was very angry. But this was distressing for me as well. So he came in, he was shouting, he was at reception, he was furious, he demanded to speak to the person, and they were threatening to call the police. And the reception woman, or someone we spoke to, eventually, once things calmed down, had made a comment that this wasn't the first time there'd been an issue with this specific psychiatrist. So I can't remember if eventually he was able to speak to her or he wasn't. A lot of it is very blocked out. But after that, I did not see her again. I continued to see my therapist, and eventually I was diagnosed with severe obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, anxiety, and eating disorder. And that was around about where I was at when I was there. When someone actually took the time to listen, to look at the facts, what actually happened, how I'm feeling, how did I remember doing this, blah, 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 blah. It didn't take long for them to realise that it was impossible for what I thought I'd done to have even happened, but the damage was already done. From them 2 meetings with that psychologist, and I'm not saying I would have been fine, far from it. There was many more traumatic events that happened in my life and mental illnesses, but what happened from those 2 meetings tore the family apart more than it already was, ostracised me more than it already had. I was basically, from that point on, even though I kind of had been, but from that point on, I was someone to constantly watch. I was a bad thing. I was trouble. It's hard to talk about, but I was just something that was difficult. And there was ways that the ways that was dealt with was that my dad basically tried to ignore it as much as possible, and I became like a dark shadow to my mother, who we already had a struggling relationship. I don't know if it's because she's seen some of herself or her flaws in me, but this meeting, this couple of hours that was spent with this woman, I believe just solidified that. I became just a bad person to many family friends. I was an issue, a problem. I was someone that brought stress upon my mother, someone that disrupted the peace. That's how I was looked at, that's how I felt. And I blame myself. It took me years to realise, even after therapy and facts, I still believed that I had done awful things, that I was a terrible person. And really, they should have been calling social services, but it wasn't because I was an awful, dangerous child. It was because of the situation at home, which I just find just insane that was missed. The eating disorder went on for a very long time, up and down, obviously, as eating disorders tend to do. But I will never forget that meeting. I'll never forget how it made me feel, and I'll never forget the impact that it had on my life and family. And we need to learn from this. I think things are getting a little bit better, but there are so many instances, especially in females, where diagnoses are missed, are not taken seriously because it's hysteria, it's hormones, it's being oversensitive, and these things are missed. Mental health disorders are complicated, and when you're a child, it's so hard to advocate for yourself because I didn't have a clue what was going on. I needed somebody who was a professional, someone who had experience, to help me figure out what was going on. And I didn't get that, and I think a lot of people don't get that. I remember I got my patient files, or I got some files a while back, and one of the file things that had been filled in was talking about potentially removing me from the family home because I was a danger, etc. And so many people, like teacher in school, a therapist that I was seeing after school once a week, had stated that they didn't believe that I was a bad child at all. In fact, they thought that I worried too much about my actions and other people's emotions. I worried too much about taking care of other people, but that I just needed to be listened to. And I think, I didn't know obviously that they'd said that at the time, that was private, but it speaks volumes about the damage that missing symptoms, missing a child trying to tell you when there's something wrong. Listen. If a child explains to you that something strange is going on, just listen to them. If they tell you at 12 that they feel sad, or they feel depressed, or they feel confused, don't laugh it off as, oh, you know, we all feel sad sometimes. Obviously, teach them that. But if they're telling you, I don't feel right, something's wrong, I feel really sad, listen. Get them help and support that they need, and don't be scared to tell a therapist or a department that you don't feel comfortable with somebody if you feel like they're not helping you or they're not listening to you. I wish that I had had a bigger voice back then to have just stood up and walked away before damage was done, but I didn't. And I think that if you're going to take anything from this video, take away that you have a voice, advocate for yourself. If you think that they're telling you something that doesn't sound right, or they're telling you back what they think you're explaining and it's wrong, tell them. If you need to change therapist, counsellor, change them. Don't take no for an answer. It's your mental health, it's your health, it's your support that you need. And if you're a therapist, if you're a counsellor, I'm sure there's so many amazing therapists and counsellors out there, and I've spoken with a lot. I've spoken with some really not very great ones, but I've spoken with some amazing ones that do make an impact. Please remember to listen. Not everybody's the same. No person, I'm sure you know, is going to present with the exact same symptoms for something. I was later diagnosed in later life with CPTSD, with OCD, an eating disorder, anxiety, depression. There was BPD was in there, but now I'm a little bit unsure, but I'm being tested for autism, which would make sense for a lot of things. But again, I don't present in the way that people see that, therefore that was missed. So we need to remember, people, whether the same gender, same age, anything, everybody's going to look different with a disorder. Be patient, be intuitive, ask questions. That is my story on my horror experience with a psychologist. I am not telling this to scare people. I want people to be more open about good and bad experiences that they have had with medical professionals. Not to slate medical professionals, they do God's work. All medical professionals, from the porters and cleaners in hospitals, all the way up to your consultants. They do a fantastic job at keeping people alive, keeping people safe, keeping people healthy, but we can always improve. And I think that talking about good and bad experiences can help people learn, because I think you can only learn so much from books. I'm not a medical professional, but I have definitely been through all of the medical, it feels like all of the medical people that you could ever see, I feel like I've seen. And I think you only learn properly when you learn from people who are experiencing the issues. And so this is why I've made this video. I hope it's been helpful. I've been wanting to do this for a really long time. That is everything for now. Please leave your questions down below and experiences. Did you have good experiences, bad experiences, and why? Why was it a good experience? Why was it a bad experience? If you are a therapist, a psychologist, I would love to hear from you. Even if you make a video in response, I don't mind that. It's my story that I'm putting out there. I want to share my story. I want to share my mental health. That is why I make this channel predominantly, and to talk about these taboo topics. So I'd love to hear what maybe you would have done different, or if it was wrong, or if they did the right thing. I would really love it if you could subscribe to the channel and like and comment, please, because it does help get the video pushed out. Apparently that's what the algorithm does now. Also, if you'd like to know where these t-shirts are from that I keep wearing, they are from the t-shirt club. I think you get your first t-shirt for free and you just pay postage, and then it's like a once a month thing and you can pick the different t-shirts. They have so many designs. I love t-shirts. I'm not sponsored by them, but I do have a link that I think is an affiliate link that anybody can get. I'll leave a link down below, but this is the one I have on today, and I probably have about 10 of them now. I love it. I just love t-shirts. I would size up in them. That's what I normally do. But yeah, that is everything for now. So wherever that you are, I hope you have a lovely morning, day or night, and I will see you again next time. Bye.